Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
If you're a serious hunter and you haven't tried Hex yet, this is the edge you're missing. Hunters have always talked about animals having a sixth sense, feeling you before they ever see you. Hex works by completely blocking your body's natural energy, helping you get closer without tipping them off. Most hunters don't believe it at first, until they hunt in it. And once they do, it makes them believers fast. Go to hexhunting.com, that's HECS hunting.com, and use code WAYPOINT to save $20 on a full Hex system.
All right, welcome back to Survival and Basic Badass Podcast. So anyway, basically, we always think of what about health, right? The whole point of prepping is to make sure that we survive and we're able to take care of our families and carry on. And that's the big thing. So it turns out the core to all that is staying healthy, right? Like if we don't stay healthy, you don't carry on, you don't live forever, and you're not prepared to keep going, right? There's no point in preparing to die, right? That doesn't really help. Although I guess you could prepare to make sure that you don't leave people a big burden when you die. Maybe that's a thing you could prep for, but we'll talk about that on another show. Maybe we'll have the will episode, how to do that. We'll bring in a lawyer and figure out estate planning. Maybe that's the future. But anyway, what it is the idea is we need to stay healthy. Now, a lot of people have the fantasy in their mind of, well, I could stand to lose a few pounds. So if it's the apocalypse and there's no more McDonald's and I'm eating less, everything's going to be great, right? I'm going to lose weight. Things are going to look up. All of a sudden, all my health conditions, I don't have diabetes, but diabetes goes away, and all the different things. Your joints start feeling better. Your knees hurt less because the doctor's always like, if you lose weight, it's like 4 times on your knees, and you lose 40 pounds. It takes a lot of pressure off. So that's the big fantasy that everybody has. And, I won't need cholesterol medication and everything will get better. But I'm not sure that's exactly how it's going to work. I always did watch like Survivor and those shows, and you see the people who are like kind of chubby are the ones who kind of hang on and are doing pretty good.
Right. You need that spare tire for fuel if you're not eating.
That's it. The healthy gym people who have like the 6-pack going in, like 2 days later, they're like laying on rocks going like, and you're like, whatever, where's the fat guy? It's like, I don't know. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with having a few extra pounds, especially if you're in an emergency. The big problem is that a lot of the nutrients that you need, it's not necessarily just calories, it's nutrients, right? Your vitamins, you got to get your vitamins.
And that's the thing though, honestly, is if you're not taking care of your body and eating healthy and taking the vitamins and doing the things you need to do, then you are a lot more at risk for other things. And that's really the big problem. And by staying in shape now, you could prevent bad things later. Plus, obviously, it's nice to stay alive even in good times. Who knew? Right. Having a stroke or a heart attack doesn't exactly sound fun. And that's nothing, you want any part of. Now,
like you see, like, a lot of the people that were in the concentration camps, they weren't getting enough food.
They didn't get healthier.
Most of them didn't starve to death, though. You know what I mean? They died of other illnesses because they had no natural immune system anymore. It was broken down from not having enough calories. And it's rare that people actually starve to death. It's much more likely that you'll die from something else because your body couldn't fight off an illness.
Right. Now, again, we're not doctors. We're not giving medical advice. We're just trying to, it's hard to have this is what you should do for your health. And hey, we're not doctors. But the idea is we want to get you thinking. We want to get you to say, hey, what's important to my body? What do normal people need to live? And maybe I should start doing a little research on my own, or maybe I should start talking to my doctor and see if he has any thoughts of where my deficiencies are and things I need to focus on, or for my family where they need to focus on. Now, one of the biggest curveballs, though, Kevin, is being pregnant. Nobody wants to be pregnant during the apocalypse. It's always fun to make the babies.
Right.
It's just not fun to have the babies when you don't have the whole support system, because if you can't go get pickles and ice cream.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Do you want to be pregnant? Like, probably not.
Yeah.
And do you want to be around pregnant girl if she can't get pickles and ice cream?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only things that come to mind. It's been a few years. I don't really know how it all works,
Yeah, it's been a little while for me too. Yeah.
So
my youngest is 23 now, so it's been a couple of decades.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat. So the first thing is you need to think about, how do we not get somebody pregnant, right? Now, Kevin, obviously, we all know the answer is abstinence, right?
Abstinence,
Isn't that
yes. Every church has been preaching that for years. Abstinence.
So we should just have that's the answer and walk away, right?
Have Pastor Jim come by and tell you all about it. He'll explain everything to you.
All right. So that's maybe not the best answer, though.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe not, where you want to be. So there are a couple things you can do, right? One, you could get a vasectomy. Hey, then everything's good for the apocalypse. But if you're planning on still having babies, then maybe that's not going to work.
Not the best bet if you want to have.
I imagine that you could have a pretty good supply of birth control pills that last a while. I don't really know how often people replace them anymore. If that's a 90-day thing or whatever. I don't really know. I don't imagine it goes that long, right? But who knows? You could talk to your doctor about getting, a longer prescription or going out, a little further on that. Also talk to them about the shelf life of those kind of things.
Yeah. And a lot of women have problems with taking birth control pills, just health issues.
Yeah. And there's different things now that are whatever. Now, then there's condoms, and Kevin, some guys are, maybe allergic to latex. You never hear the girls that are like, oh, I can't use it. But you always hear the guys, they're like, I can't.
Yeah, it's weird like that, right? Yeah.
Condoms usually last 3 to 5 years. Obviously work for STDs and for,
yeah. Now, as far as STDs go, hopefully you're not just hooking up with loose women during the apocalypse, because that's just a bad move, guaranteed STDs. Now, back in the day, they used to have medications for STDs that would treat them, but they all involved mercury and mercury poisoning. So there's that. Not really better. Sometimes it's better to have the STD than to have the mercury
Now
poisoning.
You're thinking, oh, what about those sheep intestine condoms that I heard about?
They are, and you can get those still.
Yeah, but no,
they're
but the
real.
homemade version probably not going to be.
No, probably not the best way to. Yeah.
That's usually actually a no on what you want to do. The homemade condom, that's DIY and herbal remedies. Probably that's going to be a no-go on that one.
Yeah, that's safe.
There is the pull and pray method that does actually help things if you have the discipline. It's kind of like the abstinence thing, where the discipline, it turns out abstinence is slightly more effective than pull and pray.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Much more effective.
But you have to have the discipline that goes with that. And I don't know that that's always, the better way to go. So there's that. There is the whole, like, they used to do like the witches or something, charting the stars and the moon and the
Yeah.
calendar and going for that. It turns out, although I've had discussions with grown adults who believe that it's like actually on the calendar day, like,
Right. The
oh,
full moon is
at the
no-go.
end of the month is when women all have their cycle, and I'm like, that's not really how it works. But
No.
so you can look into that.
It it surprises me the amount of grown adults that I talk to that really have no concept of how all that works.
Yeah. It's sad, as a society, we like to say, well, that's the woman's problem to worry about. You think of it. I've heard the analogy, she's like the goalie, and it's her job to make sure things don't. But it turns out, if you actually care about somebody and you want things to happen, you got to kind of, maybe put some effort into figuring it out together or whatever.
Mhm.
Maybe it doesn't all fall on her. It is possible you could get a vasectomy, maybe loop back to that one, because then you're
Mhm.
just kind of free for the whole thing. I'm just saying that opens doors, right?
However,
Yes.
I do have to say, I do have to point out that my wife's has a sister that's 12 years younger than her
Mm.
that happened after a vasectomy because sometimes they grow back.
Oh, that can't be good, Kevin. Yeah, no, that's a no-go. So there is actually things where they say track basal body temperature and cervical mucus and all kinds of stuff. That's actually really effective to like chart it out.
Mhm.
They say way better than like calendars, and can be as effective as the supplemental hormonal stuff that they do. But you might want to kind of figure that out before the apocalypse. But
Yeah,
then
and
again,
it's really
like
easy to make a mistake
a
too,
baby
you know?
happening, it's like a big mistake. It's not like a good practice. Like, hey, this might work. Kevin doesn't want to be responsible for any of your hey, I got pregnant, and even he wasn't involved. I'm just saying his
Yeah.
advice doesn't want to lead to pregnancy. So definitely consult a doctor on all these. We are not the authority. I'm just saying different things you could look into. All right.
Right.
So part 2, what happens if you do get pregnant? That's another
What if you're
story.
already pregnant when
There you
things
go.
go down?
You were planning and you were like, hey,
Mhm.
let's have a baby. And then the world ends. All of a sudden, somebody goes to war with Iran. And then Iraq is like, we're friends with Iran now. We want to go after you too. And then it just starts to escalate. Maybe that could happen. Right. So what do you do there? Well, so early confirmation, obviously there's great, birth control stuff, like instantly. But either way, you could kind of look into the missed periods and symptoms like that, the morning sickness. You could actually stockpile with your prepper gear some pregnancy tests. That would probably be smarter, because obviously with the dramatic diet change that people might be going into, you might have missed periods anyway.
Right.
Depending on their calorie intake and that kind of stuff. So that's something to keep in mind. Monitoring body temperature too prior to getting, pregnant, something to maybe look into. But basically, proper nutrition is going to be a big thing. I imagine postpartum, which is an issue now for a lot of women, could really be an issue. That would be kind of the depression and the issues that come after childbirth, maybe could be even worse in a dramatic situation.
Mhm.
So that might be something where, honestly, having good sound advice from people who know. But it's one of those things, I hate to say, but as an adult, you kind of, and I would say, if you're going to be jumping in and having sex, you kind of are falling into that adult criteria.
Mhm.
Although I will say some of the decisions I made at the age when I started having sex were possibly not as adult as they should be.
Mhm.
So, it's the pot calling the kettle black,
Right.
um, you have to, think ahead, right? How these things work, and plan for, things like that to happen. So just be ready. So if you're going to be the guy, or maybe you're running a compound, maybe you watch some videos on childbirth. Maybe you kind of figure out how things happen. Turns out you can do a little bit of research and get a lot of information, where a little bit will go a long way. And knowing how to deliver a baby is kind of like, that's actually, I would almost say, a discussion you should be having with your kid before he goes out and have sex is like, hey, you know how this all works? Do you know, and understanding the basics of what somebody would have to do without a doctor. That's kind of like the prepper extreme. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's also kind of responsible. So that's something to think about. But there's a whole lot of other things that aren't pregnancy that we could talk about with when it comes to, the apocalypse and nutrition. One of the big ones is a lack of vitamin C.
Yeah.
Kevin, I know you mentioned scurvy in the past. We're talking bleeding gums, fatigue, wounds that don't heal, death in months when you get scurvy.
Yeah.
And if you really cut out vitamin C, that's in your future.
Yeah. And they say that the only real cases they encounter anymore are, people in extremely rural areas and people in urban areas where, their diet is, McDonald's, but the thing is with scurvy, when you get it, you can just take vitamin C and that shit clears right up. It's like, it's not like a long road back, but
yeah, you
can get vitamin C, vitamins, just over the counter vitamins and keep them in you can, get multivitamins and keep them in your cabinet, like a 5-month supply. You can just stick in there. It should be part of your preps is having multivitamins. Absolutely. Vitamin D and vitamin C are ones that really cause problems quickly if you're not getting a healthy diet.
Right. And if you're deficient on anything, a lot of people these days, it's weird. It kind of changes. Maybe we're doing a better job monitoring things, but vitamin D and iron are big things that people end up getting, issues with. Believe it or not, remember, Kevin, we used to hear about thyroid, and remember they started putting iodine in the salt. They still have iodine in a lot of salt for thyroid issues. And so having iodine on hand, calcium, magnesium, that kind of stuff help with, weak bones, muscle cramps, that kind of stuff. Again, same thing. If you go back to pregnancy, anemia, hemorrhage risk, all this stuff, low birth weight, if you're deficient on a lot of these things, especially the iron and the vitamin D, calcium. So definitely multivitamins are the way to go. And we were going to mention hard pills are really good at keeping their potency, I guess.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind. But also
things like things like pain relievers, anti-diarrheal medication, antacids. Those are all things that have a long shelf life. They say that 90% of prescription and over-the-counter drugs remain safe and effective for up to 15 years after the expiration date. Now, there are exceptions to that. Nitroglycerin that people take for their hearts, insulin for diabetes, and liquid antibiotics don't have a great shelf life. So if you're in one of those categories where you have to take that regularly, you want to be on top of that. You want to have that your prescriptions up to date as frequently as possible. So that's a big one. Now, one of the other things I want to talk about is staying, not just staying healthy with your vitamins and a good diet if you can keep one up, but keeping things clean. That's a big deal. So
you should be washing your hands.
You should be washing your hands all the time. Now, one of the big things I see with people that are living off grid or living, doing one of those challenges where they're out in the wilderness for a month is clean water. You can you have to boil your water or clean it in another way to make sure you need to be drinking water. You know what I mean? You need that to survive. So securing a safe supply of drinking water is a big deal. Now, wounds
Bleach
and things like that, keeping that stuff clean. Now, here's some of the, I'm going to give you a list of some of the things that you should have on hand that will last forever, that you can just get and stick in your cabinet. Rubbing alcohol, big one. If you get a cut or something like that, normally I get a cut and then like just running under hot water. It's fine. It'll be fine.
It's good.
But
I always, let me stop you there. Cause I always wondered about that. I was like, well, I get cuts all the time and I don't get an infection, or I get a mild infection, it'll be red around it or whatever, but it doesn't, require antibiotics to heal. And I used to think about that. But the thing is, you're not bathing regularly in the apocalypse. And that's the thing, like if you are, you're going to stay ahead of the game and things like that. It's your overall cleanliness, or, are your clothes clean? Are your hands clean? Is your body filthy? Like, go camping. And even if you're still showering once a day while you're camping, see how dirty your hands get when you're working with a fire, when you're working with stuff. And just notice that kind of filth that's on you if you're not washing all the time. And your body's exposed to that when you get cut. So just think it's going to be a different environment that you're working in.
Right.
So,
right. Bar soap. That's another great example of something you can stock up on. You can have,
and it'll last forever.
Right. 100%. Vinegar, another one that you can stick in the cabinet. You have it. You might not necessarily clean your body with vinegar. You can, but you can clean surfaces and the things where, things that you're using with vinegar. Baking soda is another one. 2 to 3 years, unopened baking soda, 2 to 3 years, you've got, shelf life with baking soda. And, it's one of those things where, like Chuck said, if you're not keeping your body clean, your clothes clean, you're going to get an infection on a small cut much more easily.
Right. Yeah. And that's, because it's easy to dismiss it and say, well, I don't go to the doctor and get antibiotics like ever, but now all of a sudden, when you're outside, you're doing jobs that, I know OSHA's big thing. I always go to the OSHA training at work, and there's so much less of a risk with things that are repetitive and routine. But remember, the apocalypse, all of a sudden, you're doing things that you're not used to doing. You're out working with an axe. You're out using a chainsaw. You're out, a lot more frequent. And those are the times that things are going to be, you're cooking outside on a wood stove, or you're using, metal grates, and you get some burns that you didn't used to, be exposed to, because it's a different environment. And you got to, learn to adapt, but there's a learning curve, right? And while you're learning, things are going to be different, and you are going to be a lot more exposed to injury. And so you need to think about these things ahead of time and just find a way to prepare for it. There is a book that I always rave about whenever we talk medical, The Ultimate Survival Medicine Guide by Joseph Alton. And they talk about how to deal with pregnancy. They talk about medication, but it's something you don't want to set on the shelf and wait till the apocalypse. You want to review it now, because he talks about things you could stockpile to make your life 1,000 times easier when bad things come. But it also is a great book to have for the apocalypse anyway, because he covers that anyway. Like, you still can go back, and he offers you can't go to an ER. Here are the alternatives that you will have access to. And that's, that's the nice thing. Because, even an ER doctor isn't going to be as familiar with the alternatives, because they get so caught up in, well, I know this is the drug for that, and they assume,
Right.
are used to a lifestyle where the pharmacy is right next door. So that's something.
Right. They call it the standard of care. Like, we always prescribe this medication for this illness, but if that prescription's not available, what are the alternatives? And that's not always something that's, that's front and center in somebody's mind.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about how do we get some of these things? The foraging. What can we find out there in the environment after the apocalypse? Now, one, as we've covered, is you need to stockpile these things beforehand. It's going to be great and really help you. It just takes away the stress, right, of what you got to deal with. However, dandelions, the leaves and flowers, you get vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K, iron. So you can eat these in a salad. You can eat them in tea. So there's lots of ways you could deliver that. You can come up with your own stuff. Chickweed, the leaves, stems, and flowers have just all kinds of vitamins and minerals. You can eat them raw. You can eat them cooked. Wild violets, the leaves have vitamins A and C. Wood sorrel, the leaves have vitamin C, kind of sour and nasty tasting, but it's vitamin C. What are you can do? Now, you guys have heard of pine needle tea. That used to be a thing. Turns out, so the needles from white pine or spruce trees have huge amounts of vitamin C. And so you would steep that into a tea and do that while it's kind of fresh, like the greener stuff. Wild garlic and onions. Now, everybody's heard that garlic is a good antibiotic kind of thing. Reduced flowers, red bud flowers, daily buds. You could cook them, cook garlic. You could eat garlic raw. We all know. Berries are very big on vitamins. Blackberries, blueberries, acorns have some good benefits. But these are things to, think about that you can access. But something like that, a good foraging book, doing the research beforehand is really where you need to start digging into it. I mean, we touched on a few, but again, I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not an herbalist. But getting some books on the nutrition and going through is going to set you so far ahead that you can, really do that kind of stuff, like be able to treat and deal with issues that come up. And the big thing is to be preventative.
Excuse me. I was just reading a book recently, and it turns out if you live in an urban area and you go to the zoo and kill a tiger, you can grind up their bones and use. The Chinese say that all that stuff is medicine. It'll cure your everything. So if you can find something that's endangered, like an
exotic
tiger,
animal, yeah, sure,
take it out, grind up the bones, eat the meat, all that stuff. Good stuff. Apparently.
If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm throwing up the we're not doctors, and this should not be considered medical advice.
Yeah, and don't kill endangered animals because it doesn't really cure anything.
Kevin, now I will say the Chinese pay a premium for ginseng, and if you want to go the other way on the fertility and the pregnancy thing, where you're trying to get women pregnant, maybe you're trying to repopulate the world. Well, ginseng is going to be your friend. They talk about honey and ginseng as like something gold or whatever. Asian guys were all about it.
I'll tell you something. When I was a teenager, I was taking ginseng regularly. I had to stop because it was all the time. It was all the time. And I just had to stop taking it all together. Now I'm in my 40s. Maybe I should try it out again. I don't know.
You got to think about that. You're not that far from Chinatown. You drop in, they'll get you some root. Now, the more gnarly looking the ginseng is, like if it looks like a creepy old man or whatever, the better it's going to be. The better. The more all over the place. So I'm just saying, ginseng and fertility, those of you guys who, you get a little older, things don't start to work. Ginseng is your friend. Like you said, Kevin, maybe you revisit that and then you're like a teenager again. I'm just saying. But that's kind of the opposite direction that we should be going. That's if you're trying to repopulate the world.
That's right.
Maybe you were smart, took my advice and got the vasectomy. And then Or, and then the theory of, well, if a woman's breastfeeding, she can't get pregnant. It does reduce the odds, but that, don't
Yeah,
count
but
on
it's
that one.
not.
There's been a few
Yeah, there's a
mistakes
lot of
over the
stuff that
years.
I hear that I would not count on that as being effective. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff like that I hear. Oh no, it's safe when you do it this way.
Mhm.
No.
Yeah, I would say anything that you've heard here today, take it to your doctor and be like, "What about this one? This is what I'm wondering about.
Hmm.
This is where I want to." But the good thing is, like, to really think about, your weight and stuff in the good times, and can I get rid of a lot of these required medications? Sometimes doctors aren't that quick with answers like that because they're just like, "Oh, well, I'll just give you this drug." To be honest, my doctor's like that. My doctor is like,
Hmm.
it's funny. He knows I'm not big on drugs, so he won't really recommend anything. But he's also like, yeah, everything's good. Just don't do things a lot. Don't smoke too many
Yeah.
cigars. Don't eat too much food. If you eat too much food, mix it up a little bit. Eat some broccoli every now and again. Whatever. It'll work out. And I'm like, oh, whatever.
Yeah,
Now,
they
mind
used
you,
to
I have to
say
point out, my regular appointment got canceled because they were like, "Oh, he's out with health issues." So, I don't know.
the
My
doctor,
doctor.
right. Okay.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, they things always change though. You know what I mean? Like as far as medical science goes, like nobody even knows if drinking milk is healthy or
Or
not anymore.
eggs.
It used to be,
Eggs.
yeah, eggs, same thing. I don't know. Nobody knows. And they used to say, well, if you're an alcoholic and you're drinking all the time, you should be drinking red wine because
I've
that's
heard that.
yeah, not
No,
true. No, just don't drink. Don't drink that much. It's not
less
good
is
for your
more.
body. Every bit of alcohol you drink is doing damage to your body and increases your chance of getting cancer. I don't want to like be a downer on anybody. I'll probably get cancer because I drink plenty of
Whiskey
whiskey,
helps,
but but that's not medical advice. Don't do like I do.
Yep, absolutely. And there are just tons of medicinal stuff. I'm just saying, check out some foraging books, expand your horizons a little bit. Talk to your doctor about things that might help, and just start to plan that way. But I gotta say, if you buy a couple of multivitamin boxes, you could really go a long way. But also don't think like just you. You got to think of your prepper group kind of thing, right? And
Right.
there's nothing wrong with, like, you could probably take a multivitamin every other day. Probably be okay.
Hmm.
Like it would
Right.
be, you're not going to get scurvy. I guarantee. If you take like the 100% total, men's health kind of thing, multivitamin,
Hmm.
if you took that once a week, you're probably not getting scurvy. You're,
Yeah. And most of those, if you look at them, they're like 1,000% of your daily value for vitamin C. Yeah.
you don't need to get crazy, but you need to have a plan. And that's really what prepping is all about, right? That's what we should be doing. So, anyway, with that, I would say stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.